Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another installment of A Rebel
Could you do one more riff that goes up instead of down, because that depressed me.
Okay, let's do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was descending.
No,
We're going to go ascending.
Yeah, let's try that. Yeah, that's better.
Do you feel better?
Much better now.
Okay, because I had to descend at the end just to get to a
Jews do that.
A resolution.
We descend at the end.
Yes, I'm on my descent right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to welcome the great Jeff Kanew to my humble little podcast, A Rebel Without Applause, coming to you from my little television studio apartment right here in the Wood of the Holly under the sign. And for those of you that don't know, Jeff has crossed a million boundaries in show business, beginning as a trailer editor to an editor to directing some of the funniest and most iconic comedies of the 1980s and beyond. He's with me here today. Jeff Kanew, welcome. How are you?
Now that I heard all that, I'm very depressed. I just wrote a memoir that my kids made me write about my life because they think it's interesting or whatever. And one of my sons said, this has to be the title because you said this once, and you have to have that as the title of the memoir. And it's, I'll burn that bridge when I come to it.
That's a brilliant title.
So that's the title.
So
anyway.
So you're living proof that success doesn't bring happiness.
It does while it's happening, but at some point when you lose it, it's very depressing. But let's not be down, or let's be down.
Let's be down. Let's go where it goes. As I said to you, my core joke as a comedian is I'm living proof that if you're white and you're privileged and you hang in there and you pay your dues and you stay disciplined and you never ever let go of your dreams, you still might not make it.
And I have a much shorter one, not the same, but I tell this to my sons, which is don't trust your friends.
Especially if they're in show business.
Yes, exactly.
What I'm really curious about, so many things, because you started out in trailer editing. I was looking at some of these credits. These are the most iconic movies of their decade: Midnight Cowboy, The Graduate, Rocky, and Annie Hall. What kind of collaboration did you have with the actual directors, or was it between you and the studios?
It was mostly with the studios. With certain filmmakers, they wanted to be involved, which was smart. Mm-hmm. Mostly it was the studio marketing people, and then there was a whole daisy chain of other people that could put their 2 cents in. So it was not a very clean process working for the studios. And every once in a while, something would go through, untouched, which is out of 400 trailers, I would say maybe 10 things went through untouched that I did. But one was The Graduate, and one was Midnight Cowboy, and one was Rocky, and one was Cuckoo's Nest, and they were a big thing. Annie Hall. I worked with Woody on every film during this certain period of time, from Bananas to Annie Hall. And he was interested or concerned about if some studio hack would misrepresent his movie, which I understood. So we had a process where I would shoot an interview with him at his Moviola or wherever, and I would ask him questions, and he would come up with sort of off the cuff funny answers or whatever. And then I would edit all that together, cutting away the scenes from the movie. And it was fun. That was like the style of thing that I did with Woody, except for Annie Hall. That I treated with like a more serious film when that was just cast and scenes, and there was no narration and no overlay of a advertising style to it.
And no conversations with Ralph Rosenblum, who actually edited the movie and
no
credits himself with saving it.
The conversation that I've had with Ralph was once, maybe we said hi on that movie. I did a movie called Eddie Macon's Run, where I was the writer, the director, and the editor. And then the producer, a guy named Marty Bregman, who wasn't nice, basically saw the first cut of the movie. And before it was 5 minutes in, he turned to his henchman and said, we need a new editor. And I said, wait a minute. I said, first of all, you haven't seen the movie. Secondly, editing is the one thing that I have a lot of experience with. This is only my second directing thing. I don't think you need a new editor. They called Ralph Rosenblum, and they paid him to come in and recut my movie. But he really wasn't that into it. So he did it in like 2 days and took the money, and I didn't use his cut. Then the producer, this Marty Bregman,
Right.
who had the same agent as I had, he was going to fire me off the picture. And then the agent said to me, let Bregman have a screening of his version, and you have a screening of your version. And then whichever one tests the best, it was a Universal thing, let Universal pick the one that tests the best. So I thought, all right, that's fair. So we went out to Las Vegas. That was Bregman's choice. It was Eddie Macon's run. It was a B movie. And we had 2 screenings. Mine was the 7:00 and his was the 9. I think that was how it went.
Right.
And my version was about 5 minutes longer than his version because there was a subplot in the movie that was really the heart of the movie, because it was about a man who escapes from prison and runs across Texas to get to Mexico to be with his wife and kid. So Bregman, who was a kind of a heartless person, felt that all the scenes relating to the wife and kid and all that stuff had to go. So then all that was left was a guy running across Texas to be in Mexico and dealing with some bad people or whatever. So the audience for his version thought his version was much longer than mine because they weren't emotionally involved in the movie. Anyway, the cards were much better for my version than his. So in the lobby, after the Universal people present their analysis of the cards and whatever, Bregman walks up to me, and I think he's going to say, okay, you win. But what he says is, I'm going to cut your fucking balls off. And he did. And I got kicked off the movie at that point, and they finished his version.
And Ralph Rosenblum got the editing credit?
I got the editing credit. Ralph didn't even want the credit for his 2 days of work. But then I flew out to LA to talk to the head of the studio because I was incensed. And I said, look, it's your $5 million. One version tests better than the other. Why would you finish the one that tested worse? He said, look, Marty Bregman's a powerful guy. He represents Al Pacino. He manages Al Pacino. He manages Alan Alda. I'm not going to fight your battles for you. So that was it. I was gone.
How did you like working with yourself as an editor when you were directing?
I worked well with me. I tended to. No, because the thing is, I didn't have much experience with other editor directors or editors really, because the film editor on the movie never got involved in the trailer. It was always the producer or the director and the studio people.
Right.
So the editors used to resent some guy coming in and chopping up their movie.
Right, but I mean, when you actually edited the feature, not the trailer, as a director editor of a feature.
Right, but what I'm saying is that I learned somehow that it's a lot of trial and error. But a lot of the film editors that I had met on other movies, they had like an ego about it. So they would be there with their apprentice or their assistant, and they'd have a grease pencil, and it was on the moviola, and it was on film at the time,
right.
And they would like tap the film. That's where to cut. Now, when I was doing it, I thought, I'll cut here. Oh, no, maybe I'll cut here. Oh, no, it looks a little better here. It was all trial and error. So there were a lot of splices in a row because it was tape splicing.
Right.
And the splices made noise when they went through the moviola. So the editors didn't like it. It seemed sloppy. So they'd like to make one cut and leave it alone.
Oh.
So we didn't get along because I felt that was lazy. I could never have just made one cut and thought, yeah, that's good. I had to see if it was a little better this way or a little better that way. So that was how I learned to work, which is don't think you know until you try.
My experience with the moviola was that every time I made a tape, if I didn't feed it properly, it was like a machine gun and the sprockets were just blasting all over the place. And then I had an hour of repairing sprockets just so I could look at the movie. And it was like, I couldn't. It took a while to learn to control the tension. I have to admit, I never really did it, but it almost drove me insane.
Yeah. And when that used to happen, I used to say, I guess God doesn't like that take. So let's go. This is another take.
Yeah. And then so when you'd have a cut of a movie, ultimately it would be all these tape splices kind of jiggering through this jalopy of an editing machine.
Right. Well, so that was true actually all the way until Nerds was cut with film and tape. Gotcha was cut with film and tape. Tough Guys was cut with film and tape. The next one was Troop Beverly Hills. I think that was also, they were all film and tape. There was no video editing.
At some point, though, you went from the upright to the flatbeds, right?
Yes. Kicking and screaming, but yes.
But
I
that
thought
seemed like there was less tension on the actual film. So
absolutely was. It was quieter. It was much better.
yeah, less tears and disasters. Now, Eddie Macon's run was the beginning of one of the most important relationships in your life, I believe, and that's with Kirk Douglas.
That's true. Honestly, the one good thing Bregman did was force me to use Kirk Douglas because he wanted a name for some foreign sales purposes, whatever. I wanted to hire either Peter Boyle or Gene Hackman, who weren't that big a deal yet.
Right.
The whole idea was it was a New York or New Jersey cop who has to work in Texas and hates cowboys. So I wanted a real New Yorkie guy.
Peter Boyle.
Yeah, but Bregman just insisted that I go see the two decisions he forced on me. One was to use John Schneider for the lead because I didn't think he was very good. He was a nice guy, and in the end, he was pretty good in the movie. But from Bo Duke on Dukes of Hazzard, that's not who I saw in this movie.
Right.
Plus, he was like 20, and my character, as written, was like in his 30s with 2 kids. So I had to change the script and make him younger and kill off one of his kids and whatever. But Bregman, that was Bregman's choice. He said to me one day, and here I had optioned the book, adapted the script, and now he was the boss, and somehow he could tell me what to do. So one day he says, what do you think about John Schneider for the lead? And I said, nah, I don't really think so. Well, you're on a plane tomorrow. You're going down to Atlanta. If he approves you, he'll do the movie. He was going to approve.
He approves you.
Yeah. So that was that. Then it was like, you got to have a meeting with Kirk Douglas. You got to go out to LA. I go, I don't know, Kirk. I love Kirk Douglas, but I don't think that's the guy. He goes, yeah, you're going. His name has foreign sales value. You're going. So, okay, I was in awe of Kirk Douglas and Bert, whatever. So I flew out and I had a meeting with Kirk, and he said, I won't do a Kirk Douglas impression. I saw your first movie. He said, I saw your first movie. I thought it was really good, but I thought that the main character was played to one note. Hal Holbrook was to one note. Okay. Which was my fault because that's how I thought it should be, because the guy's thinking of killing himself and his family. He's not going to be like a roller coaster. He's going to be in a very strange, alienated place. Anyway, Kirk says, I like the movie and I would have done it differently. Okay, but I'll do this movie. So he agrees to do it. And he comes down to Laredo where we were shooting. So I started shooting a week or two before he showed up. And I got a long memo from him, script changes or suggestions. And I didn't have any experience with this whole process. So I thought, actors don't make script changes. What do I know? So he comes down and the first thing he says to me when I go to say hello to him at his hotel is, did you get my script notes? I said, yeah, I got them. He goes, what do you think? I said, well, I mean, do you want to talk about them? Because we both had a copy. I said, yeah. I said, all right, let's talk. I start going down the list. And I go to the first one. Yeah, I see what you're saying here, but I don't want to do that. The second one, no, I mean, I think this, and I'm justifying because I think I'm the director and the writer. I better be able to justify what's in the script.
Right.
About the 6th or 7th one, there's a relationship where Eddie Macon is running away from jail, and he gets helped by this rich playgirl woman, and in the end, she helps him get back to his wife and kid, and she ends up by herself, and Kirk ends up letting him go at the last minute because he feels sorry for him. And so these two characters are isolated. At the end, he says, I want to end up with that girl. And I go, no. I said, really, I don't think that's a very good idea. He goes, you know what? You said no to every one of my suggestions, and I got a lot more suggestions. So why don't you get the fuck out of my hotel room? So
oh my God.
Threw me out of his hotel room. Not physically. He could have, though. And now I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get fired off this movie. When Bregman hears about it, I'm gone. I don't know what to do. Next morning was Kirk's first day of shooting, and I get a knock on the door. It's his driver. Mr. Douglas wants you to ride out to the location with him. So I get in his motor home, and we're riding out. And he goes, listen, I liked your movie, and I think you're talented, but you got a lot to learn about how to direct actors and how to work on a movie. And I'm just telling you, you shut down and act like you're not listening, and that's going to make the actor shut down. At the very least, you have to act as if that was an interesting idea and let me think about it. You don't say no.
Not a bad note, by the way.
Great note. So I said, you're right. I go, but Kirk, you said one thing in the scene. There's a scene where you interrogate this Texas bimbo woman, and you want to find out where John Schneider went the night before, or it came through their property, something. And you wrote, I wanted it to be a seduction, not an interrogation. So I thought you meant you wanted to have sex with her and get the information that way. He goes, no, that's stupid. I want to get the information from her in a soft way, not bully her like a cop. I'm a tough cop. I don't have to bully a woman. I went, oh. And then he told me about a scene in The Champion where he had a scene with Marilyn Maxwell where he's going to threaten her. But rather than do it tough, he threatens her very softly, like, I'm really worried about you, because if you ever do that again, you're going to be in the hospital for a really long time. He and I went, oh, I was going, oh. So he became my teacher on that movie, especially about production things. But every day at the end of the day, when you probably remember this, you're exhausted and you just want to go home, but you have prep to do for the next day and all that. So Kirk says to me, where are we shooting tomorrow? And I went, the jailhouse. All right, let's go over there right now, you and me, and we'll talk through the scene without the whole crew standing around. I went, really? He goes, yeah. I go, really? Okay. So every day we go at the end of the day, and he had the energy for it. And it was really helpful, to figure stuff out so that there's not 100 people standing around while you're figuring stuff out.
And it shows how much he cared about the process.
Yeah, no, he was great. He was great.
And he was prepared. He had thought about the script. So I remember,
Yes.
My experience is limited relative to yours, but Chris Maloney was kind of a pain, but what I loved is that he really cared. And so it didn't matter, like, you care. So that's the main thing. And most people don't care. So like, what, somebody cares, Of course, he had been a great producer. I mean, Spartacus.
Right. I mean, he worked with,
Kubrick.
He worked with Kubrick, and he worked with, the name went out of my head because that's an aging thing, this very famous screenwriter who wrote Spartacus.
Dalton Trumbo.
There you go.
Yeah. Paths of Glory.
Right.
I mean,
now, Dalton Trumbo wasn't allowed to have a screen credit because of the blacklist.
But he broke it. Did Kurt?
Yeah, it was the contract said screenplay by Sam Jackson. And Kirk said, I can't do that. I mean, it's Dalton Trumbo. He wrote the script, and I'm putting it on there. Fuck it.
Right.
What's going to happen? What are they going to do? Not release the movie? So
Right.
he did it, and it stuck. And that was great. He was. There were a lot of people in Hollywood that didn't like him because he was kind of tough when he had to be, but he was smart. And in the end, he did great work, and I was lucky enough to be his friend for like a long time. And we developed projects together that never got made. I did these 2 stage pieces with him, about his life that he wanted to do, and I just was kind of the objective eye in the audience, watching him and helping him sort of tighten the thing. And we did scenes behind him on the screen, 3 shows. And was packed, and everybody loved it. And then he just said, I don't have the energy. I can't do it anymore. They wanted to take it to New York, and he said, I just can't.
He couldn't.
And so I did that with him. And that was not that long after he had his stroke, but he still wanted to do it.
Speaking of his stroke, I had a very good friend years ago who lived in Montecito, and he goes, come on, I'm going to Kurt's birthday party. I go, who?
Yeah.
And so I went, and there I am. And it was after his stroke. And I remember I got to meet Tab Hunter, Eve Marie Saint,
Really?
They were all there, and he was so nice. And the prevailing thought I got is people said, he's so much nicer after his stroke. Like, it apparently was a huge dose of humility for him.
I'm sure it was. And then he used to do things like reach out to people with strokes. And he wrote when Bob Downey Jr. was in jail, Kirk wrote him a letter. Listen, don't, you got to get through it, but, learn from it and don't get disheartened. And then he showed me the letter he got back from Downey saying, thank you so much. This means so much to me, blah, blah, blah. He was a good guy.
Yeah. I loved Ace in the Hole and
so many good movies.
Paths of Glory,
and he had a sense of humor. Like one time I was meeting him somewhere for lunch and I was like 10 minutes late, and I get to the table and he goes, never keep a legend waiting.
Now, what was it like? Because you did Tough Guys, and then there's this other legend out there. They had a deep history together in movies,
Yes.
with Burt Lancaster. By the way, People say, did you watch this show? I go, I don't watch shows. I watch Turner Classic Movies. What, are you kidding? I watch MSNBC and I watch sports. That's it. I don't see I'm not binge watching the latest episode of My Guy Saul. I just can't. And recently was that great movie,
7 Days in May.
Exactly.
Yeah. I downloaded it and now I have it and I've watched it twice already. It's really good. And there was a point at which someone, maybe Spielberg or someone, was thinking of remaking it, a modern version. It never quite happened. But when you look at what's going on in the world today, with the insurrection, whatever, it's torn from today's headlines.
Right. Now I'm trying to remember the movie. Kirk's the Marine Corps guy. And is he the one who's the coup leader and Bert's the one who thwarts it? Or is it the opposite?
No. Kirk developed the script through his company, and they had done some work together, and he thought Bert would be great to have in the movie. And he said to Bert, whichever part you want, you can have, and I'll play the other guy. And Bert chose to be the bad guy.
The bad guy. Okay.
Right. So Kirk was kind of his loyal. He was his loyal, whatever you call it, the guy who's sort of the attaché of a powerful man. He was
right.
In the military, there must be a name for that. But so he was underneath Bert and looked up to him and admired him. And then he gets wind of this plot that Kirk was not privy to.
Yeah.
And it's a plot basically to take over the country. And Kirk first hears about it. He doesn't believe it. And then little by little, he smells that's going on because of the way he's been left out of things that are happening. And there's a date set and they call it, there's going to be an exercise, some kind of an exercise, but it's really the takeover of the country. And he goes to the president, which was Frederick March. And because Frederick March is a low in the ratings president, so he's in trouble. And Bert's going to take over the country unless they expose this plot. So that's what the movie was.
Who was that? Patty Shaw? I don't even know who wrote that.
It's Rod Serling.
Okay. My favorite movie as a kid was Burt Lancaster and Jim Thorpe, All American. As a kid, if someone said, what's your favorite movie of all time? I go, you kidding? It's Jim Thorpe, All American, the football. I just love that movie. I loved him my whole life,
Yeah,
what were those two like?
What were they like? Well, on screen, when they were working, they were mostly exactly what you wanted. They were Kirk and Bert.
Right.
But in the process of, before we shot, the developing process, Kirk had a lot of notes. Bert had none. What I found out about their history was that's how it always was. Kirk had a lot of thoughts and ideas. Bert just wanted to shoot the script, and he found Kirk really annoying. So they were like an old married couple. They loved each other, but they got on each other's nerves. Particularly Kirk got on Bert's nerves because he was always trying stuff or the energy or whatever. And Bert just wanted to shoot the movie. He was a little stiffer and he didn't need to do that. Mm-hmm. So, and I was kind of, having done a movie with Kirk, he considered me Kirk's boy. And so he didn't like me because he just assumed that anything that I say is either because that's what Kirk wanted or because I'm just like, I'm wrong for him. Plus, prior to the actual start of the shooting, I got the script from Joe Wazan, who was a friend of mine, who was the guy who got me Revenge of the Nerds. And now he sent me the Tough Guy script and said, can you get this to Kirk? Because I know you have a relationship with him. So I did. And Kirk said, great, I'll get it to Bert. And he did. And Bert said yes. And we're all set to go. And then we start hiring crew and we set it up at Disney. And Bert's agent calls from ICM and says, we have to postpone the movie. Bert just took another job. So I got to call Kirk and say, listen, we got to push back because Kirk goes, Jesus fucking Christ. All right. When? 2 months. Okay. And Kirk wasn't getting a lot of work at this point. Bert was still doing things like Atlantic City or whatever. Right. Anyway, Kirk waited, we waited. And then Bert was going over to Europe to make that movie. And then about a month in, I get a call. The director of Bert's movie died. The movie's been canceled. He's coming back. So I thought, okay, here we go. So now we start to do really serious pre-production and we're hiring department heads and crews and going forward. Get a call one day from the same agent. Mr. Lancaster just took another job doing a TV movie. I forget what it was about. I don't know if it was Ross Perot or somebody who tried to rescue the Iranian hostages by sending helicopters in. That this incident really happened. Bert's going to play that guy. So once again, Kirk has to sit back and wait. So, okay, we take that. And then finally, I can feel Kirk is getting really angry. I call the agent and I say, where's Bert? He's in Mexico. Well, I want to go down and talk to him because this is getting ridiculous. He goes, well, you can't. Well, all right, give me his phone number. No, he doesn't want to talk to you. Okay. So Finally, they say, all right, Bert will be back on New Year's Day from Mexico. You can talk to him then. And I was living in New York at that moment for some reason. And I flew out New Year's Day. I'm sitting and waiting, keep calling, no Burt Lancaster. And then finally the agent's secretary called and says, I have a message, Mr. Lancaster passes. So I go, what? He can't do that to Kirk. He can do it to me, but he can't do it to Kirk Douglas. Put him on the phone. Is he there? Yes. Put him on the phone. No. So the agent gets on the phone and I go, Ben, and he was also, that agent was ICM, and that's where I was with too, but I didn't mean as much. I said, you just tell Burt Lancaster for me that I've always admired him. I think he's a great actor, but I also think he's an immoral, irresponsible prick. So he goes, he says you're an immoral, irresponsible prick. Okay, he heard you. Hang. Now Kirk calls me, what happened? I go, Bert's out. We're going to send the script to Lee Marvin and Frank Sinatra. Kirk says, bullshit. Oh, and Frank Sinatra said, no, it's Bert's movie. And Lee Marvin, I don't know if he responded or whatever, but Kirk says, I'll call him. Kirk calls me back like an hour later. He says, I spoke to Bert. He's doing the movie. I go, really? He goes, yeah. And then I get a call from the agent. He goes, all right, Mr. Lancaster's doing the movie, but you have to apologize for what you said. And this was back in the I'll burn that bridge when I come to it days. I said, no, what I said was absolutely correct about what he was doing to his friend Kirk Douglas at the time, and I'm not going to apologize. A couple of calls back. Okay, Bert's doing the movie, but he won't speak to you. And that's how we started. I had to go through Joe Wazan to talk to Burt Lancaster until he got tired of that game, and then we started to work normally together.
You couldn't have just said, Kirk, would you just call Bert? Like, they didn't have that kind of easy going, like, are you going to do this or you're screwing me over, bro?
It wasn't easy. Kirk told me a story. He once got an award and Bert was being the presenter or introducing Kirk. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Douglas would be the first to tell you he's a difficult man to work with. And I would be the second.
But once you got on the set, I mean, you're working with these guys, they have to feel like they're treated equally or fairly by you.
And they were. And, I still admired Burt Lancaster, and he was perfect. He never did a bad take. He was perfect for that character, but he just was moody. And I guess he had some physical discomfort and arthritis or something. And I don't know, we had other incidents. One time there's a scene where there's an actor named Simi Bo, and he plays one of their old gang. They're trying to put their old gang back together to hijack the train. They go into the room and the guy has a parrot that was written in the script. I don't know exactly why. There's a parrot. And so this guy, they walk in the room and the guy goes, get him up. And he pulls a gun on them. And the parrot goes, get him up. So the parrot's like echoing whatever this guy says. And finally, they realize they can't use this guy because he's nuts or whatever. Oh, he pulls the trigger and out comes a flag that says POW, something like that. So they walk out of the room, they give up on this guy, and the guy says something, and Kirk turns around to him and says, screw you. And then he looks at the parrot. This wasn't in the script, and he goes, screw you too. And he walks out. A week later, we're shooting something, and Bert calls me into his trailer. You remember that scene in the hotel room? I said, yeah. You let Kirk ad-lib a line. I said, yeah, the screw you, yeah, to the parrot. I thought that was funny. If he does it again, I'm walking off the picture.
They were both sort of prime athletes too in their prime. I mean, they were both very vigorous and impressive physical specimens. But I think by the time, I'm just asking, you did Tough Guys, that Burt was in more of a physical decline than maybe Kirk Douglas was.
Yes. And he died, not long after that. Yeah, he had problems. And I don't know how much older than Kirk he was, but I think he was a little bit older.
They were both cut from the same mold. Although Kirk was Jewish, he was the rag picker's son. He had a different sort of vibe, I think, probably than Burt Lancaster.
Burt wasn't as open as a person, I don't think. Yeah. But look, I think he's great in the movie, and I was honored to have directed the two of them, so that felt good to me. Here's another scene. There's a scene in the movie where these guys have been in prison for 30 years. And they come out and they're not supposed to associate with each other because they're not supposed to associate with convicts, whatever, ex-cons. So Kirk goes to get a drink at a bar, his old hangout called Mickey's. But now it's 30 years later and he goes in there and it turns out it's a gay bar, but he doesn't get it yet. Right? So he goes in there and the guy buys him a drink and then a guy asks him to dance. So then he's coming out and here comes Bert to come to the same place. And Kirk goes, "Don't go in there, Harry. Just don't go in there," right? So we're shooting the "don't go in there" part out in the street in front of the place. And we rehearse the take, and it's kind of like a 2-shot, but it's favoring Kirk because he's coming out of the place. And like a struggle breaks out during the rehearsal, just out of frame. It's like, and he goes, and he goes, "Get your fucking hands off me, Bert. I know what you're trying to do." He was trying to turn an over the shoulder, turning Kirk and make it a 50-50.
Oh my God.
Right.
That's so hilarious.
Yes.
How did Dana Carvey deal with all this? Little Saturday Night Live guy.
He was in awe of those guys, and which was perfect because his character was that, he's their probation officer, but he's in awe of those guys.
Right.
So Dana was a good actor. I mean, he's funny as hell, but back then he came in just to read. That character wasn't written funny. It was just this, the guy who's trying to keep these guys from getting back in trouble. But I mean, I was really happy to have cast him. Jim Carrey read for that part and a bunch of other people, but Dana was great because he was very kind of youthful, innocent, sincere guy. And so I put him on tape and I cast him and everybody was happy. And then the studio calls and says, "We're worried about this Dana Carvey guy." "Why?" "Well, we don't think he's funny." I go, "Well, he's not trying to be funny. He's a sincere young guy who is in awe of these guys." "Well, can he be funnier?" I go, "Look, he's a comedian. I'm sure he can be funnier." So I had to retest him funny.
How do you tell an actor to be funny? Like,
I told him exactly what we were doing. I said, "These guys don't think you're funny. I don't think you should play it any differently than you have, but let's try and take it to a sillier place." So he did it and they loved it. And so I said, "So now I can cast this guy?" They said, "Well, he's too funny. He's going over the top." I said, "Well, okay, so if he can be not funny and too funny, then he can probably go anywhere in between." So they let me cast him. And then after that, Saturday Night Live.
So that was, wait, he was already on Saturday Night Live.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't?
No, this was pre-Saturday Night Live. But he was doing stand-up.
Right, I know. I worked with him. I have my own story. Is one time I was booked at a place called Igby's on the West Side, and it was Rosie O'Donnell, Dana Carvey, and myself. And I was just on the bill, but it was the three of us. But unbeknownst to me, until I got there, was Brandon Tartikoff was in the room, and Rosie O'Donnell. They were looking at her for some series, and Lorne Michaels and that crew were looking at Dana because he was very facile with impressions and stuff like that for Saturday Night Live. And I went on and had one of the best shows I've ever had. Just fucking killed it. I was so excited. And then Dana and Rosie, and he went directly, like, straight to New York to Saturday Night Live. She went straight to her series, and I went straight home.
Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah. Years later, Dana Carvey, Brandon Tartikoff came up to me, or I saw him at a restaurant. He goes, "Oh, I saw you. You were really funny at the thing." And I go, "Okay, great, thanks."
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the story of my life. Like all those near misses. But I was thinking about Kirk Douglas Burt Lancaster coming out of prison. Of course, he'd done more time in prison than probably any actor alive, because he was the sort of Birdman of Alcatraz.
Birdman and Brute Force and probably something else too. Yeah, he spent a lot of time in prison.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time in Hollywood prisons. Let's talk about this iconic movie that you did that was almost one of the defining comedies of its decade, and that was Revenge of the Nerds.
Okay, so Joe Wazan, the person that I mentioned before, he was an agent, then he was a producer, and I worked on some of his stuff. And then I had done Natural Enemies, and I showed it to him, and he said, "Boy," he said, I think you did a good job, but I don't know why you did this. Who's ever going to see this movie?" Which was honest. And then when I had optioned Eddie Macon's run, Joe was going to be the producer. This was pre-Marty Bregman. And when Joe read the script, he said, "You did a really good job adapting this book, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get it financed." Okay. That's when I ended up with Bregman. So then I did Eddie Macon's run. I got fired off it, whatever. And then that summer, I get a call from Joe one day, and he goes, "You won't believe what just happened." I said, "What?" He goes, "I'm head of production of 20th Century Fox." And he said, "I'm probably going to be fired in a year, but at least I'll be able to give my friends some jobs." So he sent me a few scripts. One was Bachelor Party. One was a thing called Gimme an F about cheerleader camp, and this Revenge of the Nerds thing. And Nerds was not a thing yet. in the world.
Was it a part of our vocabulary yet?
Not really. It came that came after that. But there had been one magazine article about computer geeks, and it was called Revenge of the Nerds. This was not what the movie was based on, but the guys that wrote the movie basically lifted that title and used it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's going to be this comedy, Revenge of the Nerds. First, when he sent me the script, I wasn't even going to read it because it sounded so stupid. I don't know what a nerd is, but it's just stupid. But when I read it, the first couple of pages was exactly like my first day at college. You know, you get there and you feel like you don't know anybody and you feel unacceptable and you go hide in your room. That's what I did. So I thought I could relate to this. So Joe said, well, there's a problem. What? The producers have seen your other movies and they don't even want to talk to you, but I'm going to force them to have a meeting with you. So you got to fly out here and meet with the producer. So I had to go out and audition for these producers who had decided that I had no sense of humor. And they were right based on my first two movies.
Right.
So I fly out and I guess I must have prepared well for that audition or something, but it lasted a long time and it felt pretty good. So then I fly back and I was teaching a class at Columbia, a film class at the time, which was great because that's what the school that I had gotten kicked out of in 1964. So that was great for me. So I'm teaching this class. So the next day I called Joe and I go, he calls me and he goes, so what happened at the meeting? I said, well, I think it went really well. We seemed to see the movie the same way. It lasted like 2 hours. You know, it felt pretty good. He said, yeah, you made one mistake. I said, what? He said, you said Risky Business was a better movie than Animal House. I said, well, it is. Well, what kind of a movie are you going to make for this? I said, well, the best movie I can, given the script. This script is more like Animal House, but I don't want it to be a cartoon. I want the characters to be real. Because that's why people will relate to it. We don't want to spend the whole time laughing that they wear glasses or something.
Right.
So what kind of a movie are you going to make? I go, Joe, you want me to go Animal House, sir? He goes, that would be good. And now I realize I'm on speakerphone and there's probably the producers are in the room or something. So I go, Joe, let me tell you this. I flew out to do this audition and I told my class that I'm teaching that I'm flying out to LA to audition to direct a stupid teenage comedy. He says, now we're talking. He goes, I want you to make a movie that not only will it never play at Cinema 2 in New York, but you'll never be allowed in there again. I said, I'll tell you what, Joe, I promise I'll make a movie I'm ashamed to put my name on. He goes, you got the job.
We had some great actors in that movie. I mean,
none of them wanted to be in it. Everybody reacted the same way. This seems like it could be a stupid comedy about geeky looking people, and I don't want to do it. Bobby didn't want to do it. Anthony didn't want to do it. Tim Busfield wanted to do it because he needed to work, but
right.
His character practically had no lines and he was just a goofy looking half blind guy. Booger tells a story. Booger wrote a book about his experience and he tells a story about how he was coming in to read and he had read the script and he said, I'll play any one of the characters except Booger. I'm not playing that character. So he comes in and Booger didn't have a whole lot of lines to read. So he read Anthony's part. And he was pretty good, but he didn't seem like that. But I thought he'd be a great Booger because the way it's written, Booger was supposed to be a fat slob, but that's too obvious. This guy is small but he's full of hostility, which is kind of cool. So I offered him Booger, and in his book he talks about he told his agent, under no circumstances can you say yes to that role. And his agent called and said, they want you for Booger. He said, I'll take it. And he's done 4 movies as Booger.
That's amazing. Yeah, well, Timothy, I think is a great actor. I mean, I had the best experience I've ever had in my one experience was with Timmy on my movie, The Solar Opposite.
Was he in that?
Yeah, he played opposite Chris Maloney. So
I don't remember Tim being in that. Yeah, Tim was really good guy. And he works all the time as a director now, and I don't. So there you go.
I know he's Mr. Television.
That's right.
I met him originally because I had little mini co-star parts on 30 something, and we both played baseball, and I was on all these little hardball leagues, and Timothy fancied himself a great baseball player. He was pretty good, but I mean, but for his acting career, he would have been in the major leagues for sure.
Me too.
Yeah. But I love Timmy. We did a podcast together a year ago, and Must have gone 2 hours, I mean, the movie business today, first of all, people are afraid to go to the theaters.
I'm just starting to go back. In the last couple of months, I just started going back to movie theaters. And most of them, if you go in the morning because you don't have a job, it's empty. So that it doesn't feel like a petri dish.
Right. It's the same amount of people in the theater as when I'm at home watching on television.
Hey, there you go. That's right.
It's like, wait, you're at the same seat. I saw a good movie. It was Sam Mendes' new movie, Bright. Wait.
Yeah, I saw that.
Empire of Light.
It's beautifully made, and a nice movie. I was kind of surprised. It seemed like such a small story. I was surprised that he wanted to tell that story, but it was good.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, and my expectations were low. So the thing that kills me is just first of all, I live in Hollywood. My favorite place is now moribund, the Cinerama Dome and ArcLight.
They get shut down?
Been gone. I mean, it's there. It's closed.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
I did a jazz show in front of the Cinerama Dome and behind there with my clarinet on YouTube, just mourning the loss of movies. Yeah, I like that movie though. I mean, but we lost the theaters. It's like,
and I saw Tar, and I saw it in the morning at a theater on the big screen, and I was so glad I did, because everything about that movie is bigger than you think.
What's the movie? Tar?
Kate Blanchett playing a conductor.
Oh, yeah.
It's about this, and she has a lot of struggles in her life, but she's a brilliant conductor. And every time she gets up and works, you watch her work, and the sound is, because it was in the theater, is like really powerful, and it's like a character. But she's got a really fucked up personality in life, and I'm sure she's going to win the Oscar for this movie.
But nobody will see it.
No. Well, I don't know if they'll see it, but I'm sure there's a big campaign by whoever represents her, and I'm sure she's like one of the favorites. I've seen people talking about it.
Do you remember when movies that actually got nominated for Best Picture and Oscars were actually also hits?
Yeah, Once Upon a Time.
I heard that one with Will Smith as the slave is good, Emancipation.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen that. The one I would kind of wanted to see, because I saw the making of thing, is I don't want to call it a remake. It's just revisiting the book of All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Yeah. I heard somebody tell me that was good.
The first one, with I think Louis Milestone. I mean, that. Did you ever see the original? I mean, it's fantastic. Lou Ayres.
I probably did, but it probably was.
It's a long time ago. But
on TV.
Yeah, I've seen. I mean, who would see it in the theaters? But I saw it. That movie just knocked me out. What was the documentary you did with Kurt about his life? While I still.
Before I Forget.
Before I Forget.
That was the play. I mean, it was.
That was the play.
Stage performance, and it was he's written a bunch of books, and he had written his autobiography, Ragman's Son, was a bestseller, and he got bored sitting home not doing work, and he was always trying to generate something. And one day he said to me, I want to do this one-man show. I said, really? He goes, yeah, I've been writing it. I said, oh, that's great. And he either let me read some of it, or he did some of it for me. And I thought, this could be great. I mean, we could, if we can, you put in some film clips or whatever and expand it.
Yeah. Burt Lancaster could play the part.
Yeah, right. You get Burt. Bigger name foreign.
You can get Burt to play you.
Anyway, he that all came out of him. In fact, one of his children, not Michael, called me and said, don't let him do it. He's going to make a fool of himself, because he had his stroke. The opening of the play is him talking to the audience, and he comes out on stage and he goes, when you have a stroke, you must speak very slowly. And I find, and he was exaggerating it, when you speak slowly, people listen. And then he goes on, gets more relaxed, and he just won everybody over. And it was just great. 3 nights, great experience.
He achieved a certain kind of nobility when he was diminished in his life after a stroke, that he didn't, for all his celebrity and fame. And, he was on a winning streak since he was a man with a horn. I mean, I don't know what was his first movie, for Christ's sakes, but he's just been on a winning streak on so many levels. Since
the stroke, he did a few things. He did a bit part in a Stallone movie, and then a whole movie that where he was the star called Diamonds, which I thought I was going to end up directing, but didn't work out. But it was an independent film, and it was called something else. It was called Sundown, and it was about Alzheimer's. And I said to Kirk, well, you could do that, but why don't you make it about a stroke? That, and that way your speech, is perfect, and it can be your story. So we rewrote it about that, and the producer said okay, and they went forward. And then somebody called, maybe it was Kirk, and said, by the way, they have a director. So I wasn't the director of that. He did that, and he did a thing called Greedy, Michael J. Fox movie, where he played basically himself, a guy in a wheelchair, which he wasn't, and basically he's a multi-millionaire, and he's testing all his potential beneficiaries to see who really loves him.
Kind of a King Lear sort of a thing.
Exactly. And so it's all about how all Phil Hartman was one, and they were how greedy they all were, except Michael J. Fox. So of course, that's who ends up getting this.
I knew Eric Douglas. He was hanging around a lot of the comedy clubs when I was doing it, and he befriended me. And he was kind of a sad story. He looked so much like his father to me.
And I mean and they did. Kirk got him some acting jobs where they worked together, and he wasn't bad. And he did stand up. I don't know that he was that funny. I never saw him do the stand up.
He was troubled. Troubled guy.
He was.
Looking back on all this now, what are you editing now? I mean, is that your main or
no? I do podcasts.
Oh, this is where the money is. I didn't realize that this whole exercise in screenwriting and acting and the movie making was just a way to break into podcasting. Who knew? It helped me during COVID because it's like, hey, I did a show. I have a series.
Do they watch this on their phone too sometimes?
I think people mostly catch stuff on their phones. Some people watch on computers, but I did some really interesting shows. I did one with Kermit Roosevelt, Teddy's great-great-grandson, who's a law professor who writes about the Constitution. I did one with this guy who writes about dinosaurs. He's advisor on Jurassic Park. And then I did a dinosaur dig in South Dakota. So I just kind of live in this sort of Anthony Bourdain kind of playing the lead role in my own life sort of experience through this. It used to be I spent my whole life trying to get some jerk off at an agency to talk to me on the off chance that he might like something that I did to actually call somebody else. And now, admittedly, there's no big financial reward here that I've discovered, but at least I'm not a beggar for an opportunity. I'm just doing my thing. And I'm a little bit happier for that. You know what I'm saying?
I'm at a point where, well, shouldn't I talk about this? I don't want to say I've surrendered or given up, but I don't delude myself as much as I used to that I can get something going. But I still have a couple of things that I would want to do. I got to the point, and this dates back quite a few years, where all of a sudden I'd be sending somebody that I used to work with, a producer or an agent, something to read. And I would get one of these, well, we really can't read this, unless it came to us through such and such or whatever. No. And that's frustrating to me. So I, even though I should still do it, because the one thing we should learn is don't let your hurt feelings stand in your way. You got to get past that if you want to get what you want to get. Did you see The Offer?
No. Is that a movie?
No, it's a 10-part series on Paramount Plus. On TV or wherever those things are. Mm-hmm. It's so good. And it's basically chronicling the history of the making of The Godfather. Really good. It's really good. And the guy who plays Bob Evans is great. And the one thing he keeps telling the Albert Ruddy guy, who's played by Miles Teller, you do whatever you have to do to get your movie made, whether you have to eat shit, whether you have to, bend over, whatever you got to do, you got to be willing to do that. So that becomes the lesson of the piece, that no matter what happens, no matter that the mafia is threatening you not to make the movie, you got to find a way. I love this. I really like watching it.
I like that because the message is you can't quit. You just keep trying. And what you just said is a lesson to me. It's like, Bill, because I got all this stupid pride that hurts me. Like, I can't go to that comedy club and do 3 minutes for this idiot when I can do an hour and a half and kick ass. It's just too painful for me. And just the humiliation in my own soul. And it's like, Bill, you got to find a way to take that and just put it away. I'm not good at that. It's hard.
No, I understand that. And it is hard. But, you'll find, I think that whatever, like I've made a couple of little tiny films. Recently, I did one where my daughter wrote it and starred in it. And, you think nobody's ever going to see this, but I enjoyed the 2 days of that shoot as much as I ever enjoyed any 2 days or of anything. It was the same process. You have the performances, you have the script, you have the lighting, you have to get it all done, all that stuff. It was great. I would do it again tomorrow for nothing.
Yeah, I did a guest star part on a TV series last week called American Auto. Never seen it. I think they're in their second season. But just have one day acting, on a set on Universal with the soundstage and lights, and there's even a chair for me, when I'm not filming. It's like, I forgot. Oh yeah, this is really fun. I forgot. This was really great. I forgot. Yeah. The only thing now is there's this triple jeopardy every time you go on a set is you got to get COVID tested. So if you test positive, it's like, boom, you're out the door, next guy in, and there's like a test every fucking day. And it's scary because they're not going to rearrange the schedule for Bill. They're just going to go next,
Yeah.
But that's the world we're in. But hey, Jeff, this has really been fun, man.
Well, that's good. I mean, I don't want to be boring.
You're not boring. I mean, people say to me, I go, yeah, I wrote 10 scripts. I made one. I feel like a loser. They go, yeah, but you made a movie, man. You know how many people have never made a movie? You should be happy. And I go, well, I guess so.
You created Christopher Maloney. I mean, he'd be nothing without you.
Yeah. You sent me that funny picture and I sent it to Chris.
Did you really?
Yeah, I sent it to Chris and I go, stop playing me. I sent the picture. I said, stop playing me. And I never heard back. It said delivered and read, like he got it.
Yeah, he probably will. He probably will be not like that.
I don't know. He used to have a sense of humor, I guess. I don't know. Years ago, he would have laughed when we did like little Q&As. Sometimes people would say, because I'm a comedian, we look similar. They go, Bill, how come you didn't play the part? And I always would say, I would have played the part, but the audience could never have believed that the girl could have left the character if I had played the part.
Yeah, right.
It wouldn't have made sense. The logic would have broken down. So it's just made more sense to have Chris. He's like, a huge television star, digging up mutilated, sexually abused corpses every week. So it's been doing
I have actually become addicted over the last couple of years to binge watching Law and Order Special Victims Unit. It's so twisted, but they're all pretty good, and I like watching it. I don't know why. It's something relaxing about it. I don't know.
I never watch it because I just spent, like, when you edit or, sit behind an editor on a feature, you're like, the guy's soul just goes into yours over the period. So I had enough of Chris as much as I actually like him. He's a cool guy. Yeah. Jeff, stay healthy. And when you come to Los Angeles, let's hang out. Let's have lunch or do something.
All right, when I'm out there.
Well, thanks so much for joining me, and to the huge audience out there on their cell phones. Thanks for hanging with me on A Rebel Without Applause. Till next time, namaste, shalom, and aloha. By that I mean namashaloha. Take care. Bye.